If you are over 60 and drink coffee every morning, you may be worried that this familiar habit is quietly raising your blood pressure, damaging your circulation, or placing unnecessary strain on your heart. Perhaps a doctor, family member, or television program has already warned you to give it up. Because heart disease and stroke become more common with age, it is understandable that you might look at every cup and wonder whether you are putting your health at risk. But what if coffee is not the most concerning ingredient in your cup? What if something you add every morning is affecting your blood vessels more than the coffee itself? 1 teaspoon of sugar may seem harmless, but when it is added to several cups every day, that small amount can accumulate into hundreds of teaspoons over just a few months. You may continue blaming caffeine while overlooking the habit that deserves far more attention. My name is Dr. James Carter, and today I will explain what coffee may actually do to your circulation after 60. We will examine its potential benefits, its effect on blood pressure, and the health conditions that can make caffeine a poor choice. Most importantly, you will discover why the way you prepare your coffee may be just as important as the coffee you choose. This matters because your cardiovascular system changes with age. Your arteries gradually become stiffer and less capable of expanding. The delicate layer of cells lining your blood vessels may no longer function as efficiently as it did when you were younger. Your body can also become more vulnerable to chronic, low-grade inflammation. At the same time, declining muscle mass and reduced insulin sensitivity can make blood sugar more difficult to control. These changes usually happen silently. You cannot feel an artery becoming less flexible, and you may not notice that circulation to your feet, kidneys, eyes, or brain is becoming less efficient. In some people, the first obvious symptom does not appear until the underlying problem has been developing for years. That is why everyday habits matter so much after 60. Coffee is more complicated than caffeine alone. It contains hundreds of naturally occurring compounds, including polyphenols such as chlorogenic acid. Researchers have studied these substances for their antioxidant properties and their possible relationship with inflammation, glucose regulation, and blood vessel function. This does not mean coffee can unclog an artery, reverse heart disease, or treat poor circulation. It cannot replace medication, regular movement, nutritious food, or appropriate medical care. However, for many adults who already enjoy coffee and tolerate it well, a moderate amount may still fit into a heart-conscious lifestyle. The answer will not be the same for everyone. It depends on your blood pressure, medications, sensitivity to caffeine, sleeping patterns, the amount you drink, and what you add to each cup. To understand why these details matter, we first need to look inside your blood vessels and examine the delicate structure responsible for keeping blood moving smoothly throughout your body. Running through every artery, vein, and tiny capillary is an extremely thin layer of cells known as the endothelium. Although most people have never heard its name, this delicate lining plays a central role in keeping blood moving properly throughout the body. You can think of the endothelium as the smooth inner surface of a water pipe. When the surface remains healthy, blood flows with less resistance. The vessel can widen when a muscle or organ needs more oxygen and then return to its normal size when the demand decreases. However, this lining can gradually lose some of its protective function. High blood pressure, smoking, elevated blood sugar, chronic inflammation, and unhealthy cholesterol levels can all contribute to endothelial damage. Over time, the arteries may become stiffer, and the environment inside them may become more favorable for plaque formation. One of the endothelium's most important responsibilities is helping regulate nitric oxide. This naturally produced substance sends a signal to the muscles surrounding the blood vessels, telling them to relax. As the muscles relax, the vessel widens and allows blood to pass through more easily. This process is especially important in the microcirculation. These are the tiny blood vessels responsible for delivering oxygen and nutrients to the fingers, feet, eyes, kidneys, and other tissues that can become increasingly vulnerable with age. Some research suggests that compounds naturally present in coffee may support certain aspects of blood vessel function. Caffeine can temporarily influence circulation, while chlorogenic acid and other polyphenols have been studied for their antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties. However, coffee should never be treated as a remedy for cold hands, numb feet, leg pain, or poor circulation. These symptoms can be associated with many conditions, including anemia, thyroid disorders, nerve damage, diabetes, medication effects, and peripheral artery disease. Consider Margaret Wilson, a 72-year-old retired librarian who frequently complained that her hands and feet felt cold. Margaret assumed caffeine was damaging her circulation, so she considered giving up coffee completely. But when her doctor examined her overall health, coffee was only one part of the picture. Margaret had become less physically active. Her blood sugar had entered the pre-diabetic range, and she added 2 spoonfuls of sugar to each of her 3 daily cups. After more serious causes were excluded, Margaret began making gradual changes. She walked more regularly, improved the balance of her meals, followed her doctor's recommendations for managing her blood sugar, and slowly reduced the sugar in her coffee. Over the following months, her general health markers improved, and her hands and feet felt cold less frequently. This does not prove that changing her coffee caused the improvement. It demonstrates why circulation cannot be understood by focusing on one drink while ignoring the rest of a person's health. Coffee may contain potentially beneficial compounds, but it cannot compensate for smoking, inactivity, uncontrolled diabetes, poor sleep, or untreated hypertension. This brings us to the question that worries many older coffee drinkers. If caffeine changes the behavior of the blood vessels, can it also raise blood pressure? The honest answer is yes, it can. But the size and importance of that increase depend greatly on the person drinking it. Coffee can raise blood pressure temporarily, especially in someone who rarely consumes caffeine. This happens partly because caffeine blocks adenosine, a natural substance that normally helps blood vessels relax. As a result, the vessels may briefly tighten and blood pressure may rise for several hours. However, this response is not identical in everyone. People who drink coffee regularly often develop some tolerance to caffeine. Their blood pressure may change very little after a usual cup, while someone who rarely drinks it may experience a more noticeable increase. Age, genetics, medication, sleep quality, and the strength of the coffee can all influence that response. It is also important to distinguish a cup of coffee from pure caffeine. Coffee contains caffeine, but it also provides polyphenols, potassium, magnesium, and other compounds that may affect the cardiovascular system in different ways. This may help explain why studies of habitual coffee drinkers do not consistently show the level of cardiovascular harm many people once expected. That does not mean everyone over 60 can drink coffee without concern. If your blood pressure is severely elevated or remains uncontrolled despite treatment, you should discuss caffeine with your doctor. The same applies if coffee causes a racing heartbeat, strong palpitations, trembling, dizziness, anxiety, chest discomfort, or a significant increase in your blood pressure. If you want to understand your personal response, you can ask a healthcare professional how to monitor your blood pressure before and after drinking your usual coffee. One unusually high reading does not establish a diagnosis, but a repeated pattern can provide useful information. Never stop blood pressure medication or change its dose based on what happens after one cup. Some people with heart rhythm disorders may tolerate a modest amount of coffee, while others notice that caffeine triggers uncomfortable symptoms. The diagnosis, the amount consumed, and the individual response all matter. That is why broad statements such as coffee is safe for everyone or coffee is dangerous for everyone are both misleading. Sleep must also be considered. Caffeine can remain active for many hours, and older adults may process it more slowly. An afternoon cup may contribute to poor sleep even if you fall asleep normally. Repeated sleep disruption can affect blood pressure, glucose regulation, appetite, and cardiovascular health. The goal is not to persuade anyone to begin drinking coffee or increase the amount they already consume. It is to help regular coffee drinkers make informed decisions. For many older adults with controlled blood pressure and no troublesome symptoms, a moderate amount may remain acceptable. But even when caffeine is well tolerated, another ingredient can quietly transform a simple cup of coffee into a significant daily metabolic burden. That ingredient is added sugar. Adding sugar does not make the natural compounds in coffee disappear. Chlorogenic acid and other polyphenols remain present. The concern is that consuming large amounts of added sugar several times a day can work against the broader health goals that made plain coffee appealing in the first place. 1 teaspoon may seem insignificant, but imagine someone drinking 4 cups of coffee a day and adding 2 teaspoons to each cup. That equals 8 teaspoons every day, simply from coffee. Over 1 week, it becomes 56 teaspoons before counting desserts, sweetened drinks, breakfast cereals, sauces, or other sources of added sugar. After 60, this pattern deserves attention because the body may not handle glucose as efficiently as it once did. Muscle mass often decreases, physical activity may decline, and insulin sensitivity can become weaker. Frequent excess sugar intake can make controlling blood glucose, triglycerides, body weight, and abdominal fat more difficult. Robert Hayes, a 68-year-old retired shop owner, learned this during a routine medical examination. His blood sugar and triglycerides had gradually increased, although he believed his diet contained very few sweets. He rarely ate cake or candy and could not understand where so much sugar was coming from. When Robert reviewed his daily routine, the answer became clearer. He drank 4 large coffees and added 2 teaspoons of sugar to each one. He was consuming 8 teaspoons every day without considering it part of his diet. "I thought coffee was my habit," he admitted. "I didn't realize sugar was the bigger habit." Robert did not remove all the sugar overnight. He reduced it gradually, allowing his sense of taste to adjust. He also became more active, improved his meals, and followed the treatment plan recommended by his healthcare team. His later improvements could not be attributed to coffee alone, but identifying that repeated source of sugar helped him make his overall routine healthier. Ordinary table sugar is not the only concern. Flavored syrups, sweetened creamers, condensed milk, bottled coffee drinks, and cafe beverages topped with cream can contain far more sugar than people expect. Some drinks that appear to be coffee are nutritionally closer to desserts. You do not have to enjoy completely bitter coffee immediately. Start by measuring how much sweetener you currently use. Then reduce it in small steps. Choosing a smaller cup, using less syrup, or replacing a sweetened creamer with an unsweetened option can also make a meaningful difference over time. This is especially important for anyone with prediabetes or type 2 diabetes. Persistently elevated blood glucose does not remain confined to a laboratory report. Over time, it can damage the smallest blood vessels and affect the feet, eyes, kidneys, heart, and brain. That connection between blood sugar and circulation is where the next part of the coffee story becomes particularly important after 60. Persistently elevated blood sugar does much more than change a number on a laboratory report. Over time, excess glucose can damage the delicate lining of the blood vessels and interfere with the circulation that supplies nearly every organ in the body. The smallest vessels are particularly vulnerable. When they become damaged, the feet may develop numbness, tingling, burning, or wounds that heal slowly. Similar changes in the eyes can affect vision, while damage to the kidneys may gradually reduce their ability to filter the blood. Larger vessels can also be affected, increasing the long-term risk of peripheral artery disease, heart attack, and stroke. This is why controlling blood sugar is not only about preventing diabetes. It is also an essential part of protecting circulation. After 60, this becomes especially important. Muscle mass often declines with age, physical activity may decrease, and the body may become less responsive to insulin. As a result, the same eating habits that caused no obvious problems at 40 may have a very different effect at 70. Researchers have repeatedly observed that habitual coffee drinkers tend to have a lower rate of type 2 diabetes than people who do not drink coffee. Interestingly, this relationship has been seen with both regular and decaffeinated coffee. That suggests caffeine may not be the only compound involved. Chlorogenic acid and other substances in coffee have been studied for their possible influence on glucose absorption, insulin sensitivity, inflammation, and the way the liver processes sugar. However, this evidence must be interpreted carefully. Most of these findings come from observational studies. They show an association, but they do not prove that coffee directly prevents diabetes. Coffee should never replace medication, physical activity, weight management, or an eating plan recommended by a healthcare professional. Someone who does not currently drink coffee should not begin consuming it simply because of these findings. The preparation also matters. A plain cup of coffee is very different from one containing several teaspoons of sugar, condensed milk, flavored syrup, or sweetened creamer. Regularly consuming these additions may make blood sugar management more difficult and reduce the overall health value of the drink. If you have prediabetes or type 2 diabetes, pay attention to your complete coffee routine. Consider the size of the cup, the number you drink, everything added to it, and whether it replaces a nutritious breakfast or accompanies sugary foods. You should also recognize possible warning signs of elevated blood sugar, increased thirst, frequent urination, blurred vision, unexplained fatigue, tingling in the feet, and wounds that heal slowly should not be ignored. These symptoms deserve proper medical evaluation rather than an attempt to correct them by changing coffee alone. coffee may be associated with favorable metabolic outcomes, but it remains only one small piece of a much larger lifestyle pattern. The next question is whether its possible benefits extend beyond blood sugar and the smallest vessels to the heart itself. Over the past several decades, researchers have examined coffee in relation to heart attack, stroke, heart failure, and cardiovascular mortality. The overall picture is more reassuring than the warnings many older adults heard years ago, but it still requires careful interpretation. Large observational studies often find that moderate coffee consumption is associated with a lower cardiovascular risk than drinking none at all or consuming very large amounts. Researchers sometimes describe this as a U-shaped relationship, with the most favorable outcomes appearing somewhere in the middle. But association does not prove cause and effect. Coffee drinkers may differ from non-drinkers in their diet, activity, sleep, income, medical care, and other habits. Researchers attempt to account for these differences, but no observational study can eliminate every possible influence. Therefore, the evidence does not mean that drinking coffee will prevent a heart attack or protect someone from heart failure. It suggests that moderate consumption is not automatically harmful for most people and may fit into an otherwise healthy lifestyle. Linda Parker, a 70-year-old former school administrator, had stopped drinking coffee after hearing that caffeine weakened the heart. She missed the morning ritual, but believed avoiding it was necessary because she had been diagnosed with treated hypertension. When Linda discussed the issue with her doctor, she learned that the decision was more personal than the warning suggested. Her blood pressure was well controlled, she did not experience palpitations, and a small morning coffee had never caused noticeable symptoms. With her doctor's approval, Linda chose to have one modest cup early in the day. She did not begin drinking coffee as a treatment, nor did she increase the amount in search of greater benefits. She simply learned that complete avoidance was not necessary in her particular situation. Her case illustrates an important point. Moderate does not mean the same thing for everyone. A small espresso is different from a large mug of strongly brewed coffee. Two people drinking the same amount may also absorb and process caffeine at very different rates. The safest quantity is not the largest amount ever associated with a benefit in a study. It is the amount your body tolerates without disturbing your blood pressure, heart rhythm, digestion, anxiety level, or sleep. Some older adults may feel well after 2 or 3 small cups. Others may develop trembling or palpitations after half a cup. People with uncontrolled hypertension, severe caffeine sensitivity, persistent insomnia, or certain heart rhythm conditions should seek individualized medical guidance. Chest pain, fainting, unexplained shortness of breath, or a sustained racing heartbeat should never be dismissed as an ordinary reaction to coffee. These symptoms require appropriate medical attention. For most regular coffee drinkers, the message is not that more coffee is better. It is that coffee does not need to be feared automatically when it is consumed thoughtfully and tolerated well. So how should you prepare your next cup? 5 practical decisions can help you enjoy coffee while protecting your blood pressure, blood sugar, sleep, and overall cardiovascular health. The first decision is to reduce added sugar gradually. If you currently use 2 teaspoons in each cup, do not assume you must remove all of it tomorrow. Start by measuring the amount, then reduce it by half a teaspoon every several days. This gives your sense of taste time to adjust and makes the change easier to maintain. Pay attention to sweetened creamers, condensed milk, flavored syrups, and bottled coffee drinks as well. Some of these products contain more added sugar than people realize. An unsweetened milk or creamer can help soften the flavor without turning an ordinary cup into a dessert. Second, consider how your coffee is prepared. Filtered coffee generally contains lower amounts of caffeine and caffeine, natural compounds that may raise LDL cholesterol when consumed in larger quantities. People with elevated cholesterol may wish to favor filtered coffee and discuss their usual preparation method with a healthcare professional. Third, protect your sleep by watching the time. Caffeine commonly remains active in the body for several hours, and some older adults process it more slowly. A cup consumed late in the afternoon may still affect your nervous system at bedtime, even if you manage to fall asleep. If you frequently wake during the night or feel unrefreshed in the morning, try moving your last coffee earlier for 2 weeks and observe whether your sleep improves. Protecting sleep also supports blood pressure, appetite regulation, glucose control, and cardiovascular health. Fourth, listen carefully to your body. Reduce or avoid caffeine if it repeatedly causes trembling, anxiety, digestive discomfort, palpitations, or a significant rise in blood pressure. Chest pain, fainting, severe shortness of breath, or a sustained racing heartbeat should receive prompt medical attention rather than being dismissed as a normal effect of coffee. Fifth, keep coffee in its proper place. It is a beverage, not a treatment. It cannot replace water, nutritious meals, physical activity, prescribed medication, adequate sleep, or regular medical care. If you do not enjoy coffee or cannot tolerate it, there is no reason to start drinking it in search of health benefits. If you already enjoy it and your body responds well, a moderate amount may remain part of your routine. After 60, you do not necessarily need to fear every cup, but you should understand how much you drink, what you add to it, when you consume it, and how your body responds. The greatest lesson is not that coffee is universally good or universally harmful. The lesson is that context changes everything. Plain or lightly sweetened coffee consumed early in the day is very different from several oversized drinks filled with sugar and syrup. The next time you prepare your coffee, pause before adding your usual sweetener. That small moment of awareness may help you make a decision that supports your blood sugar, sleep, circulation, and heart for years to come. My name is Dr. James Carter. Let me know in the comments how many cups of coffee you drink each day and whether you take it plain, with milk, or with sugar. If this information could help someone you care about, share this video with them. A healthier routine often begins with one small change repeated consistently.